I want to ask you if you're over 50 and you feel invisible at work, I want you to know you're not just imagining it. But the problem isn't your age. It's that people don't know what you want now or how to see you differently. I'm going to share three shifts that help me pivot careers in my 50s, 60s, and 70s without starting over. By the end of this conversation, you'll stop blaming your age and start seeing what's really holding you back. And you'll go from feeling invisible and stuck to being seen and ready to make your next career move with confidence. Let me share why I know this works. I've actually done this three times. First, in my 50s, I left a long standing position with United Way where people had known me for decades to create a startup nonprofit from the ground up. People didn't know how to see me outside of that United Way identity. Then in my late 60s, I made an even bigger leap. I left the nonprofit world entirely to start my own business. And then in my early 70s, after some major life changes, I regrouped and launched what I'm doing now, a completely refocused company with a new mission. And each time I faced the same challenge you're facing. How do you get people to see you in a new way when they're so used to the old you? It's these three shifts that help me navigate each transition. So here's the first shift that started changing how people saw me. When I left United Way after all those years, I made a huge mistake. I kept introducing myself as former United Way executive. I was still talking about who I used to be instead of the role I wanted to play next. I'd say things like, well, I used to run programs at United Way, but now I'm trying to see what happened there. I was leading with my past instead of my future. Here's what I learned. Yes, ageism is real, but sometimes what feels like people dismissing us because of our age is actually confusion. They see your experience, but they don't know what to do with it, how to categorize someone of your level and experience in a new context. It really doesn't matter which one it is, whether it's the confusion or, in fact, ageism. It doesn't matter whether people are responding to you because of their age or some kind of age bias, or they're confused about how to deal with you in a new context. Whatever it is, the solution is the same either way. Think about it. When someone asks you what you do you lead with your old title or do you spend time explaining what you're moving away from instead of where you're headed? I was invisible because I was stuck in my old story. The shift, I stopped saying, I used to run United Way and started saying, I help organizations build partnerships that change communities. Same experience, completely different message. Suddenly, people knew how to think about me. They could see where I fit now into their world, their space. So you're not too old, you're just telling the wrong story. People need to know what you want to play next, not what you're leaving behind. The moment you get clear on your new story and start telling it, everything changes. That's when you become visible again. But here's the thing about visibility, it's not enough to just change your story. You need the right people to hear it, which brings me to the second shift. When I decided to leave the nonprofit I built from the ground up after 10 years, millions raised, all the benchmarks hit, I gave my board proper notice, of course. Within 3 or 4 days of the word getting out, I got a phone call. One of the foundation leaders I'd worked with for years called and said, "Hey, let's have lunch. We hear you leaving. We want you to come and talk to us about consulting with us." But here's the key insight, it wasn't magic. It was because I'd spent years building real relationships. That foundation leader knew my work. They saw what I could deliver. And here's what you need to understand. If you in your 50s, 60s, or 70s, you have that same goal to mine. You've built relationships over decades. People know what you can do. They've seen you deliver results. And that's something no 30-year older has. It's going to come from your network, people who already know what you can do. But listen, you can't just sit and wait for them to think about you. You have to let them know you're open to something new. I called people I'd worked with and said, "I'm thinking about doing something different. What do you think?" Start having those conversations. Let your network know you're exploring. You'll be amazed at what comes back to you. Let me share with you the shift that really changed everything for me. When I was ready to make my third career move, I sat down and asked myself one question: what am I actually good at? Not what my job title said, not what my resume listed. What was I actually good at that created real results? I was someone who could walk into a room full of strangers and get them working together towards something bigger than themselves. I could see connections others missed because I had the skills, the training, and the practice to make the case that moved people to action. But here's what I discovered, and this is huge for women making career changes. And it's something I call the strategic language gap. Women often do brilliant strategic work, but describe it in softer terms, while men do the same work, but say strategic initiatives and business development. This is critical for career pivots. I used to talk about my experience and skills not using strategic language. And so I switched that so that I'm saying not just I'm good with people, but I build strategic partnerships, not just I helped with fundraising, but I secured over $100 million in funding. And maybe for you, it's not just I managed teams, but I led organizational transformation. See the diff I'm talking about? Or it might be not just I handled difficult situations, but it should be I navigated complex stakeholder relationships to achieve organizational goals. Those skills, they don't have an expiration date. And when you can name them clearly in ways that articulate their true worth and value, they translate everywhere. Here's what you need to understand: you don't need more degrees, you don't need to start over. You need to get crystal clear on what you actually do that creates value, and learn how to talk about it in ways that demonstrate its real impact. So, what do people come to you for? What problems do you solve that others can't? When you walk into a room, what changes? How would a man describe those same skills? That's your value. The value that you identify for what happens, what you're actually good at. And that value works in more places than you think. And that's why learning to articulate it is so important. You're not starting over. You're taking everything you've learned and applying it somewhere fresh and strategic. So here's my question for you: what are you actually good at? And how can you describe it in a way that shows its true strategic impact? Because that's your ticket to whatever comes next. Here's the truth now. I want to tell you everything we've been talking about today, this visibility, the conversations, the strategic language, it's all completely useless unless you understand the steps I teach in my Finding Direction After 50 workshop. Because you can't master telling people where you're going if you don't know where you're going. And the steps that I teach, they're what turns confusion into clarity, uncertainty into direction, and I don't know what I want into here's exactly what's next for me. So if you're ready to get that clarity, got a QR code, the link below. Get your clarity first. Everything else will flow from there. Trust me. You came here to listen to me today, wondering if it was too late to change careers after 50. Now you know the truth. It's not your age holding you back, it's visibility. That's something you can control. So you can do something about that. Let's focus on what you can control: visibility. And you have everything you need: the experience, the relationships, the wisdom. You just need to see it differently. So here's what happens next: you stop telling the old story and start telling the new one. You have those conversations. You use language that shows your real value. You're not starting over, you're stepping up. The difference between feeling invisible and feeling seen, it's these three shifts. And you just learn them. If you want to go deeper and get crystal clear on exactly what direction you're heading, Finding Direction After 50, my workshop, will give you that roadmap. And, we got the QR code and the link. But either way, remember this: you're not too old. You're exactly where you need to be to make your first incredible move.